Hello, hello. Okay, some interesting responses from my last video talking about ghosts and the uncanny. and I think I have to answer a question or two, which I thought was quite interesting. Let's check everything's working as it ought to. It is. Okay, we're good. So, a friend was asking, he's very into spiritual math, paranormal things, and he was asking why it is that it always seemed odd to him that some people have a lot of experiences, paranormal, supernatural experiences, and others have none or hardly any. And that's a great question. That is a great question. And I think I'm going to try and answer that. Because, first of all, you have to be receptive. You have to, I'm not looking for saying you need some powers or something, like some people like to claim they have a sixth sense or whatever. Although they might have, I'm not saying they don't. I'm just saying there's a little grey area there, but I think you have to be receptive to the whole thing. And also, if you just live in a city and you go about your business and never put yourself in places where the uncanny is likely to happen, you probably never encounter anything. But think about this: it's scientific, is it not? That what is basically science? Basically, science, you can make something, you can affect something to happen. It becomes science when you can repeat it in a laboratory experiment. When you can repeat it by doing the same things, it becomes science. And this is a bit like that. It's like I don't want to get into that area, but I see it like that. It is. Let's talk about. Some people would argue it's the occult science, and there's some science to it. I don't know about that. But what I do know is if you put yourself in a position where a lot of people have experienced something odd, then you might experience something odd. If you went to Lourdes, for instance, and experienced something interesting, you're Roman Catholic, you went there and you experienced something, you and many others experienced that thing, and you all went there, possibly hoping that something strange and uncanny would happen. And the same thing would go for the Marfa Lights. If you want to go to the Marfa Lights here in Texas, I know I've never been yet, but I intend to. It's one of these things I keep, trying to make time to go over there. What I'm saying is, if you go to the places where these things happen, there's a good chance it might happen. Does that make sense? Why does it happen? That's something else. That's a bigger question. And why does it happen in particular places? So I'm going to talk about some interesting things today. So I had a couple of interesting responses over on Twitter. People DMing me about my more ghostly experiences. And one person was asking if I had any more. Many more. I assure you I have many more. It's like, and there's a reason for that. And it's simply that I am receptive to it, and certainly as a younger person, I found myself, me and my friends would go to the pub and have a drink or two, and we'd decide to go and investigate things in the middle of the night. And it's like, because when you grow up in Scotland, rural Scotland in particular, there are many creepy places around you. Places that buildings, forests. Lakes, things where and obviously all kinds of things, hill forts from the ancient Celts. There's all kinds of crazy things to explore. Tumuli is a good one, which again it's something from our ancient ancestors where you find tumuli, which could be ancient graves or whatever, very ancient. Is there something there? I've experienced quite a lot of things, and I think, as I say, number one is you have to be receptive. Now, I'm a skeptic. Let me get this straight. I am a total skeptic, and I see a lot of things, and I just denounce it, and I say, well, that's nonsense. I don't believe that. I'm not buying that. I'm not buying that. But this, some things. I know. I was talking to some interesting people last night. Who'd had strange experience on the same road as I've been on many times in Scotland, and I'm talking about the road north from Stirling on through Callander and on to Loch Head and ultimately Oban. You can go other places, you can go other ways, but I know that particular road is something that is my stomping ground, and a lot of uncanny stories there. And there was a good instance of a couple who left Culty it's Army Cadets, Army Cadet camp in Culty I believe. I think I went there myself when I was a kid. I think I'm pretty sure of it. So we went to anyway. So I was looking at the story of a couple who left Culty and they were trying to get to a Chinese restaurant in Callendar, and ended up in Oban. Somehow did this massive leap from the lady watching the moonlights on Loch Lubnig, which is just north of Callendar. Something between there and then a realization that they were 5 miles from Oban, and those two places are very far away from each other, and they had to backtrack and drive all the way back, and neither of them could explain this situation. And apparently that happened twice to them. Very strange situation. I've experienced all kinds of stuff on that loch, that road, and around that loch itself. That loch is a very mysterious place. In fact, I had family lived there for centuries, and we, just about above that loch. And what I find incredible about it is, they used to talk about the wild horse of Killavroni. I wrote a story about it several years ago, and I think it was stolen. To be quite honest, and made into a movie. You saw the movie The Water Horse. I'm not going to say it because I wrote the story called Ich Yushka, which is the Gaelic for the water horse, and basically I think my thing was lifted, and I can give you explanation who lifted it, because I know I entered the competition at Glasgow University one time. We submitted a lot of ghost stories, and the funny thing is my ghost stories tended to become movies. So I don't get any money for it, but I'm very suspicious. I'm very, very suspicious about what went well. Now, I don't own the copyright on water horses, of course, but I think someone just lifted the whole idea from me. But that's another story. But so that was me as a budding writer, and that shows you what you're up against. Come to think of it, there's a lot of people out there with no talent hacks, and they just sit and just steal what you do. They steal your stuff. So anyway, I want to talk about the white horse of Killavroni for a start. And basically, this thing was a water kelpie, which is a very evil thing. And water kelpie would encourage children or young adults to come and ride on it. And once you got on its back, you could not get off. It was like a magnetic force held you to this horse, and the horse would then run into the sea. In this case it's Loch Lubnig, and drown you and eat you, because at that point you realise what it is. It's not a horse, it's a water. It's a kelpie. So that's basically. Now, how old is this? I believe thousands of years. I don't think you could put a date on how old this is or how old that story is. And it used to freak me out going past that loch, because there was one guy, I think he had a sense of humour, because he had a field down there and he had one horse in it, and it was a white horse. And I used to think to myself as a kid, is that the guy's horse, or is that the wild horse of Killavroni? And I just never went near that thing. But that's not the only weird experience I had there at Loch Lubnig. It was my sister. I was in my sister's Jeep, and we were driving along, coming back from somewhere up north, and she had to pull over for some reason. And we pulled into the lay-by at Loch Lubnig, and it's a good place to sit and eat a sandwich anyway. So we were sitting there for a few minutes, and this was a weird thing. And I said to her, there's a cat out there. She said to me, "Oh, it's just a cat, lost cat." I said, "It's not a cat. It's a panther." And the two of us were looking out of the windows of the car at a panther on Loch Lubnig, and it had a chain around its neck, this thing, and a green pendant. Creepiest. I said to her, that thing is just gonna, go for us. So, and it didn't matter that we were safely inside this Jeep. This thing was like, ready to do something. It was kind of terrifying. I was sitting at the passenger side looking out of it thinking, oh my god, what is this thing? And I didn't even want to look at it. It was so frightening. That was no cat. I assure you. And there's been many sightings of panthers across that part of Scotland. My cousin who was studying to be a priest at that point, he showed me some book, and he said, he liked to believe everything was demonic, so maybe it is. And he said that was a demon visiting you. And I have to say, there is such a thing out there, the chain and the green pendant or a pendant had me. Let's just say, the thoughts out there, I think more likely someone just owned a panther illegally and it somehow had escaped into the wilderness and this thing was out there. And a very, very dangerous remote area where it could prey on you. I've fished Loch Lubnaig many times. I wouldn't want to meet up with that thing. But they of course can cover a lot of territory in a few days. And up there, such a creature could probably live for years, a whole lifetime. There's deer, the sheep, the thing could probably live there. Another game, of course. Probably live in the mountains behind it. There is a pass from Loch Earnhead to Loch Lubnaig. I don't know, is it 12 miles or 6 miles? I can't remember. It might only be about 6 miles. I've certainly walked it across from Loch Earnhead and it comes out nicely at Loch Lubnaig. Great place to take your boots off and stick your feet in the water. But I wouldn't. If I was seeing that thing, I'd probably think twice about it because meet that thing by myself. I don't think I would live to tell the tale. This was a seriously angry, panther. So is that true? You decide. I'm telling you, it happened. My sister witnessed it. It's a shared experience, and this is interesting. Shared experiences. I was talking the other day about the cottage me and a friend came across. And again, that was the same part of the world. We were coming back from the pub, and it was very dark. Well, it was nighttime. Let's just when I say what I want to say is there was a moon, but dark night, moon. Problem is there was a mist, and so your visibility. I wanted to say something more about that because what I forgot to add when I was talking about it was your visibility was like about 20 to 25 feet. Honestly, at one point a car did pass us on that road. And we didn't see the car lights till it was like right there, right there in front of us. And then, and he was moving very slowly. So thankfully, he didn't see us either. But he's moving so slow. And because the moonlight was kind of like skewing his lights in some way. But there was a reflective, feeling about the mist, something that I've seen often in Scotland. So anyway, what we did that time is it's worth going over that little story again because what we came across is the guy I was with had been living on that road forever, all his whole life, and we came across this little white cottage. And what was weird about it is where the windows and the door should be. It was just you just saw black emptiness, black windows, black door. And we're looking at this, and we were kind of thinking, what is it? He said, I don't know what this is. I don't recognize this. And he wanted to explore it, and I wasn't so keen. And that was a shared experience. So this is something that's a good thing. When you get someone that shares the experience with you, it's true. It happened. I mean, most likely. But the point is about putting yourself in the place where things happen. Now, there was also I talked to a friend the weekend about Bonnie Bridge in Scotland, where there's the centre of UFO sighting, so some want to call it. And I've been very sceptical of that place, mostly because my parents live very close to it. My parents live very, very close to Bonnie Bridge, so I know the place very well. Let's just say it is my backyard. I've hung out there a long time. And some of it, I want to say, I'm not saying it's false. I'm not calling anyone. I quite the opposite, actually. If you listen to what I'm saying, but I think there's a lot of mistaken things because a lot of these UFO sightings began after the building of Cumbernauld Airport. So I just want to put that out there. And Cumbernauld Airport is a lot of the business community. Some Americans even fly in to see their companies there. They had, so, and it's hard to say hard to say what those guys are about or the hours they keep. So you might see all kinds of mad things. But in that part of Scotland, I've definitely experienced some weird phenomena like that myself. So and in fact over Castle Carey, which is quite interesting. So maybe there's something in it. I'm just saying, you have to be more selective. You have to be, just because you see something in the sky there, it doesn't mean it's it is a UFO because you don't know what it is. But it doesn't mean it's some mysterious phenomenon. It'd be totally explainable, and that's something. But my grandmother, she always freaked by that place. I think that's where the big rail accident happened over the bridge itself. I'm not sure. She had a newspaper cutting. My old grandmother had this from God knows when, and it was the actual. I think a train went over the bridge at one point, killing everyone. And why she kept this paper was because my grandmother she did have a let's call it the sixth sense. She was very supernatural that way, had occult powers if you wish. And growing up in the rurals of Scotland, today some people would even consider her a Wiccan or a witch. But to be honest, as I've pointed out before, that's just the way people live. She was a farmer's daughter. People live like this. This is a folklore. This is a folklore matter. This is not something someone who lives in an apartment in the city decides to become a Wiccan and learns. No, these are things she grew up to understand. Special properties of plants and things like that, and obviously she had many Roma friends because the Roma used to come to work on the farm, and through them she learned a lot of things, a lot of interesting things. A lot of respect for the Roma through my grandmother because she would talk about them and what she learned from them, and the Roma children who grew into adults who still came, and they would they were friends basically. But anyway, she had this picture of the bridge at Bonnie Bridge, I believe it was. If it's another bridge, please correct me, but I'm pretty sure it is Bonnie Bridge. And the train wreck is hanging off the bridge like that. But what she pointed out was it's like a plume of smoke, but this is like a day afterwards, and she could see a spirit there in this picture. And I must admit, seeing it as a kid, something that had been printed in the paper and people never really thought about it, but she saw something there and pointed it out to me, and when I looked closely at it, I really felt there was something in what she was saying, and that's a weird one of these weird things. So it's a weird place. Weird things go on there, absolutely. So I'm just saying, be selective in what you accept as weird phenomenon, though. Cumbernauld Airport is in the vicinity, and strange things happen there. Well, people keep strange hours, businessmen. Because it is a private little tiny airport, but definitely along there, you got to also remember how historic that place is. I mean, I've walked from there from what place? Twerker. I've walked from Twerker all the way through there and all the way through Cumbernauld, because what it is it's on the Antonine Wall, the Roman wall that's there, and there's an incredible walk for anyone that ever does it, gets a chance to do that. At one point it goes through the middle of some houses in Cumbernauld, but other than that, it's still worth doing. But there's some really interesting parts of the wall. So truthfully, there's been, when you think about the wall itself, there's been a lot of conflict there between the native Picts and the invading Romans. So it's a place where creepy things might happen, and so you got to remember that, or rather accept that some of these places are entrenched in what is a little uncanny things, over many, many centuries. So it is an interesting place. So let's just check something. I just say, keep an open mind. If you wanna really experience something like that, the answer is not to switch off, not to be too much of a skeptic. Be skeptical, always be skeptical of whatever people tell you, because people lie. People exaggerate. People want attention, sadly. But if you go to these places yourself and experience something, well, you can't really argue with that. So I wanted to talk about some other stuff. Now, you're talking about a guy here who has been through many haunted houses, really. And we got a lot of old castles in Scotland, and I've been stayed the night in one or two that really creeped me out, frankly, and saw things which I thought were a bit uncanny. I've also hung around Aleister Crowley's house up at Inverness, and which Boleskine, and as I know quite a lot about that. My grandmother was born in the vicinity of Boleskine. In fact, my late father, he just passed on in the past few months. His name was Alistair. Fill in the blanks. His grandparents knew Aleister Crowley, so you can see that there's a. Oh yeah, and I have to say they were followers of Madame Blavatsky. They believed this stuff, and very open-minded people. And interesting that that was like my great grandparents, and then my grandparents. They carried this into. They were very into seances and things like that. Something I don't accept. I don't really accept that. Well, it's not that I don't accept that. I don't accept the honesty of some integrity of some of the people who do it. And that's the sad thing. But that's something that we've known for a long time. That the people don't always tell you the truth. It's a business for some people. But but he so much so that there is, believe it or not, a church where they actually believe this. So within Scotland, I don't know if it's everywhere, but and my dad's cousin, even in his lifetime, when he filled in his army documents, he put that down as his religion. So who knows? Hey, if you want to go in the census and put down that you're a Jedi Knight, that's fine. Also, I'm open to anything you want to believe. Anything. Absolutely. It's a weird world. This world is very weird, and what you want to believe in it or disbelieve is entirely up to you. And he honestly believed in this. As very into. He was very into. This is my father's late cousin. He was even so 2 generations on, maybe 3 generations on. He was still very much into Madame Blavatsky and the kind of things she believed in. So there's an occult influence in my life, let's just say. Open-mindedness. My father did not believe that. So we were brought up in a household where basically my people were Presbyterians. But interesting that, as I say, that gentleman I'm talking about, my father's cousin, his son became a priest, Roman Catholic priest. So you can see that that was a kind of rebellion in its way, that he decided to go the other way and do that. And that's very open-minded. So, since something to warm off the winter chills, I'm going to have a glass of this. So why not? So winter chills. I had a couple of interesting stories I hadn't related on my previous video talking about ghosts and things. And one of the experiences I've definitely did, and this happened in a British castle. And it belonged to a friend, and he was having a lot of renovation done on it. So in this part of the building, there was no doors in the bedrooms. No, I didn't mind. I was just like, semi-drunk and just looking for a place to sleep. And it's quite a small room, so it was. And my bed was lying this way. So where the door would have been, it wasn't yet hung. They had a new door coming. It was just an opening. So, and I had the lights on, and I was reading a comic or something, and I became aware of a noise in the hallway outside, and it was like something being dragged along the hallway. It's a little creepy, 2:00 in the morning. And when it got to the door, or rather the open doorway, how can you say you saw a noise? Because that's the best way I can describe it. Because where there should have been something, there was nothing, but I still heard the noise. And it was like dragging something along past the doorway. And I watched it, and I was petrified, I can tell you. This thing is like, as I say, quite a small room. The door was, if the door had been there, there would have been No room at all. I would have been like 4 feet from the doorway, and the bed is running this way. Doors there. So this is feet from me, 5-6 feet away. This is not like something you're hearing from afar, and I've never been able to understand or explain that. So I got up and I looked out in the hallway, checking that my friend wasn't just like, playing some silly game on me. But no, he's fast asleep in another part of the building, and what used to be there is apparently there was a staircase went down like this, but it used to be quite different. So there's now a cupboard and a staircase. What it used to be is it would open up to a staircase that went down like this. There was no cupboard, there was just one big staircase. So this thing basically went right to the wall, which is where the staircase down would have started. I was kind of terrified. So let's just say I slept with the light on that night, and that was something. So I felt that it was being, whatever you want to talk about ghosts or whatever, it was for my benefit. It was telling me something, and I told him, I had a strange experience. Next morning I said, I had a strange experience out of the building last night, and he said, we've had a lot of things there, a lot of people seeing ghosts in that room and things like that. So quite a lot of experiences. Now I have another story that's quite interesting, and this one I call it my angel. I don't know. This is a whether it was an angel or a ghost. It's quite a terrifying thing. And there was the local nobility, had a big estate, and I was walking along there one night. I was about 17, and it was a partial moon. It was quite a clear night, but very empty road. There was no cars, no nothing. Kind of typical of Scotland in a small town, wintry night. It was just a cold night, if I recall. And I came along there, and I had a big coat on. I remember that. So my hands in my pockets. And when I looked over at the gatehouse, there was a gatehouse. No one lives in it now. It's just empty. Or at that point, anyway. Beautiful little gatehouse to the big estate at the back, where there's a proper country home, beautiful, lavish building, which I've been right up to and been in it, and it's absolutely gorgeous. But anyway, so I had to pass the building anyway, the gatehouse on the road. And at that point, the road, it's had some work done and widened since then, and the forestry and whatever's changed a bit and been a bit landscaped. So, but back then it was just a kind of turny, windy little road, very dark, very, very creepy, barely a pavement at one side. And anyway, so I was going along there, kind of thinking how cold it was, and I looked over to the gatehouse itself, and what it was at the gatehouse is, you typically it's pillars and metal fence and a fancy gateway from some past century. It's usually like that. So that's all locked up. But what I did see was what one of the pillars should have been, or what is there above the pillar to the right a bit. There was something there. There was something there about 8-10 feet off the ground, and it had a human shape to it. Just the body shape of a human being in the semi-moonlight. I was just looking at it. This light, almost shiny thing, reflective of the moonlight or whatever. And of course, I'm about maybe 7,500 feet away from it. So it's not like I could talk about the detail. I never saw any detail in it. There was no detail. That is the thing, just a shape. See the head, and the hands were back like this. It was rather creepy. And I like to call it my angel, but it was like someone being hanged, to be quite honest. It was like creepiness. When I look at it, what a creepy thing. And that is an old estate, which, so anything really could have happened there in the past. So I was talking to one of the people who lived down the road a bit about it. Finally got where I was going. I just kind of rushed past that place and gone out of it, down into the town. And this guy was saying, hey, you white as a sheet. I said, yeah, well, I just had an experience, and I'm not really sure what it was. And he said, oh, well, that place is haunted. So there's been, the little bend, he said, there's been some people killed on the road there, car accidents and things like that. He said, but other things, but the house behind it, there's a white lady who is often seen in that house and in the vicinity. So jilted bride story, I'm afraid. And I thought, well, that's interesting, but I want to see if someone else corroborates that story, get the history of the place, and it's true. This is a person that knew something about the local folklore, and it took a long time for pieces to fall together and actually get that corroborated. And it came, and I was reading a small publication that came about the area, and true enough, it mentioned her, the white lady, in her story. Did I see the white lady? Maybe, but I saw something that night, and it's like the funny thing is, it's like maybe it's my Asperger's syndrome. When I see things, they stick in my brain forever. I don't forget it. Right now in my head, I can visualize that, even the quality of the light and the reflections, the moon and everything. It was just a creepy place. I never felt comfortable passing that place afterwards, but I used to look directly at it, where I saw this thing above the post of the, stone pillar. There's a stone pillar, and this thing would have been to the right of that, about 10 foot off the ground, across the road. So after that, I deliberately looked at it. I'd taken my fears on rather than look away and not look at it. That makes sense. Just my way. But very, very strange area. So like the people talking about, the missing time people found themselves somehow between Loch Lubnig and Oban. I mean, this is all on the same road. I mean, it's a creepy place. And I want to talk about that missing time because it happened to me. I was listening to Whitley Strieber. I don't know if you listen to his podcast. It's very good. You ought to. And the great thing about Whitley Strieber, he's the guy who wrote Communion and The Day After Tomorrow and a lot of other things that became movies. He's one of the things he does on his podcast, he was talking about missing time. How he found himself, he's been standing in front of the fridge and he's saying what happened to the last 30 minutes. Things like that. It's a curious thing. Now, why do I think that's curious? There's something in it. Because it happened to me. It was it was an evening in December. And it was the graduation ceremony of my university. And I was on my way to it. And I this is in Scotland, of course, and I drove onto the M8, Glasgow, a road I know very well, and I've driven that road. I drove that road every day. In fact, truthfully, I used to work in Edinburgh, and so I knew I'd drive that way to Edinburgh, and I'd driven it every day. And when I was studying, I drove it the other way to Glasgow, and this time I experienced missing time. This is very strange. So this is a road that I know very, very well. And yet, there's about 30 minutes pass, and I discover I'm going the wrong way on an empty road. I was, instead of driving towards Glasgow, I'm driving towards Edinburgh, and 30 minutes along the road before it dawned on me that this is not what I should be seeing. But what happened to that 30 minutes in between? There's nothing. Nothing. That's like missing time. So I had to turn the car around and head back to Glasgow. But the point is, this is exactly what he's talking about. It's a missing experience. It's like almost as if for that moment somebody stepped in, changed something, and put it back, but he didn't put it back. It wasn't put back quite right. That's how I read it, and it's like I mean, in my mind, I'm trying to explain to myself how could I have gone there to get to the road I need to be on in Glasgow. I mean, I've actually physically from the traffic lights got to cross the road above, go down onto the motorway ramp, and follow it that way. And how could I possibly have just turned left and headed towards Edinburgh? It didn't make any sense to me. It's a weird situation. It may have happened one other time to me also, but definitely that time. I felt there was something off about it. And the road was totally empty. This is only like 7 p.m. at night in the winter, which of course is very dark in Scotland. A very creepy feeling came, I felt as if there was someone there with me in the car. It really felt weird. And I had to float until I saw the lights of Glasgow going along the M8. It never really wore off until then. I felt a bit more comfortable getting out of the darker places. But these are just stories, but experiences. And as I say, you have to put yourself in places where you're going to get these experiences, and you will experience things. You definitely will. Now, the thing about Scotland is there are many locations like that, and places that if you're alone, it's more likely you might experience something. Now, part of that, of course, our own psychology, where you feel. Well, my dad used to talk about something that I never experienced because I do a lot of hill walking, or I did, and I never ever felt alone or vulnerable. Well, my dad's quite the opposite. He used to feel. He said sometimes you just get this feeling when you're in a place it's like you shouldn't be there, and that's a curious thing. And he even as when he was in his 40s, he experienced something weird, and he got to it really kind of freaked him out a bit. And I think I'll keep that story for another day because it's quite uncanny. It's a bit disturbing. So, but I think one time I came across that feeling, but I've never really had that. I've been gone fishing myself and wandered up into the mountains and all kinds of stuff, and never really had any issues that way. In fact, I like my privacy. I like being able to do that. My mind, I can, experience and nature and view it. So I see it, part of it. So, but one time I did, and it was in the mountains. I was looking for something else, and I came up off the river, and a way I don't usually come, up this little embankment hillside through these trees, and what I found was a roundel, and that's like an old settlement. I found one, and people in the area there's something like that, but it's not that, because even trying to talk to someone about it, they were talking about this other thing that looks like a Roman theatre or something. I said, no, definitely not that. This is a roundel. Roundel, and it's like people who lived in the farming community, tiny little houses. It's like if you can trace the rocks right round. You can see the rocks up like this under the turf, and you can walk around the top of it, and you're on the wall. That was the perimeter wall. It's a round shape, and inside there was little houses where people would have lived with the cattle back in the day. And having found the thing, and I suddenly got this feeling of being very vulnerable, and like I had gone somewhere I should not have gone. It felt like I had intruded. So I apologised to whatever, and I left the place. Strong feeling that I had intruded in something. And afterwards, I mean, those things. If you find something like that, chances are some archaeologists will go and excavate it. I kept quiet about it. I don't want people digging it up. To be quite honest, it probably is interesting things there, but there are some interesting ancient tumuli around there. And as a teenager, me and my friend tried to excavate one. We were very, very careful. We weren't going to damage anything. I was we were studying related topics, so we knew what we were doing, and we were looking at it without damaging anything. And we just wanted to see basically how deep it went, and we could see through. When we were able to move a few rocks, we could see a gap down into it. Maybe it drops 10 feet or whatever, but there's something down there. And that's where we left it, because that's we're being conscientious. Let's just say that someone more experienced and should be excavating a thing like that, not us. But we were just curious about how shining our flashlights down into this darkness, what is probably an ancient tomb, just a slit there, and he had nightmares all that week afterwards, which is a weird thing. And I had a dream. And my dream was quite interesting, but it wasn't like he suffered nightmares. My dream at that point was something else. Skip the heater. And it comes about when if you want to start reading into this stuff. I was studying some anthropology at the time, and I was looking at the books of Henricus Cornelius Agrippa, the famous occultist. And the point is, if you start reading that stuff, you will experience things. I swear, you will. You will experience things. It's in your mind, it's in your subconscious, it's in your conscious. It's like anyone who basically. I don't want to talk about Aleister Crowley right now, but if you want to read into that stuff, chances are you're opening yourself up to possibilities. Hold on, my heater again. Strange situation where it's either too hot or too cold. It's just one of those mornings. Just a minute. There's my whiskey. Okay. Just a minute. It didn't go too well. Such is life. If you start reading into these things, believe me, you will experience all kinds of things, good and bad. But at that time I was reading the work of Henricus Cornelius Agrippa, trying to make sense of it. And that actually came after. Why I got interested in him was I went to Dunblane Cathedral, and they had where some of my family are buried. Some of my family are buried there. That was in Dublin, and I went to the museum, which was the Leighton Library. There was some kind of Leighton Library there, and it was a bishop. The bishop there who had a lot of bad books, books with the printer's devil stamped on it. You should never. Why a bishop owned those books in the 16th, 17th century? I don't know. It's a common story. It's a common story. Then when you look at a bishop's library back then, there have been bishops who are also somehow involved in the occult. I don't know about that, but it's a common enough story. And I accept that just maybe you want to know what the competition are up to. You want to know what the other side's doing. Absolutely. But, there was something more about this guy. He had all the original books by Agrippa. And what the people there had done is they'd photocopied basically his charts about correspondences and how things correspond, which is an interesting idea. So, correspondences got me into looking at it. Basically the correspondences are based on the Greco-Roman gods as for each month of the year, and all the things which correspond to them. and somehow the 9 orders of heaven and the 9 orders of hell and how they relate to one another. So orders of the angels and the orders of the demons. Yeah, it's all there. So maybe it's the whole picture, how you're meant to accept this thing works. So I was reading this stuff at that point, and my friend, as I say, he had strange nightmares, and I had a nightmare. And my nightmare though was more like in line with Agrippa, and basically, I know my father was in the dream. Some other people I knew, but I was wearing the Cross of Malta in the costume I was in. We were knights, and I was wearing the Cross of Malta. And fleeing ahead of us was a demon. A demon was fleeing ahead of us in the dream. And basically, we went after him with our swords, and this is the dream. This demon, and it was a weird situation. But I remember it because it was in a building like a castle and obviously a cathedral. Hunting down this demon, passing through doors and alcoves and things like that. It was just very strange. Passing tombs and whatever. But I wasn't afraid. And then when I woke up, I felt that I'd been. This is true. I felt I'd just been promoted. Like risen up, promoted. This is something. So for people who are into this stuff, adepts and all that stuff, they would probably accept that as some kind of leveling up. So an occult leveling up. So, but the point is, thankfully, I was on the good side. So, and this demon, he couldn't face us. So that was the dream. And that's more in line with Agrippa, but it just was strange that it coincided with that week. My friend and I had been, looking into this ancient tumuli, ancient burial place from the Celts. Just wondering about. We were just, but as I say, I want people's minds at ease. We were totally conscientious and respective of the gravesite and. Any future archaeology that might go on there, quite the opposite. We didn't violate anything, and I think that's important. A lot of people have strong opinions about that, and I get that. So, just mostly curiosity, and he wrote it up in his a report he was doing for college, what we were up to, because it was part of his coursework. Quite interesting. In that part of Scotland, there's just a lot of mysterious things. There are incredible stories. I mean, there's my friend used to live in Edinburgh. He lived in Newington, Edinburgh. He had a great apartment there. You could see Arthur's Seat from the window. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And what he and I went to do one time was to see that Edinburgh had its own Faust. This is true. And this guy, who apparently had his wealth came from no one knew, and he could live in this big house. And we went to see his house, and the Edinburgh Faust is what they call him. That's something to look up. There's a fascinating little story. And he came to a bad ending, and the neighbours said that they heard screaming and unearthly noises coming from the house the night that he perished. And basically, even before he had died, they called him Faust. They believed he was or Faustus. Dr. Faustus, same idea. Had he sold his soul to the devil? Maybe. And then it was like his holiness, his hellishness, more like. Himself coming to collect. The moral of the story is, don't sell yourself to the devil. Don't do it. It's not a good idea. It's not a good deal. It's not a bargain. So, slash it off. But Edinburgh, he used to show me some creepy places there. And there are some creepy places, believe me. So, But I used to go to the Covenanters graveyard, which I know full well because my own ancestor went through there and suffered the final punishment for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. That was quite strange, to go there and commune with the place and really feel something. Is it a sixth sense? You tell me. You tell me. I believe it's being receptive. And I mean, it's like saying a witch is born. A witch is born, witches. Do they become witches? And that, there's an answer for both. Either could happen. Hereditary people. Hereditary witches, hereditary pagans, hereditary whatever. And in my case, it's definitely hereditary. Growing up in a family where, we were once close to the land and had a lot of old opinions and beliefs. And I'm just not ready to give them away. Not ready to surrender them to modern living. Because you know what? I think some of them are true. And I'm a total skeptic. But, as I say, I was discussing my grandmother. You get all these people calling themselves Wiccans and whatever. And she would probably be very skeptical of that. Someone said, I mean, it's like something I was reading Raymond Buckland wrote about. He said, "Oh, people in Scotland, 200 years ago, they were Picty Wiccan, is what he calls them, Picty Wiccan, but they didn't know it." What a stupid thing to say. So these people, he's saying they were Wiccans, but they didn't know it. They didn't know they were Wiccans. Well, because Wiccan is like not really. Maybe they weren't Wiccans at all. Maybe they were real. It's folklore. This is how they lived, and I accept. Oddly enough, I'm a reader of Raymond Buckland. Don't get me wrong. I read his books. I've read, but he's passed on, of course, and he's got some good stuff out there. But some of his conclusions were a bit doubtful. I'm particularly interested in Picty Wicca as a concept. Because I don't believe it exists. I don't believe it's true. I don't believe it's true because he would have called my grandmother Picty Wicca, and she wouldn't. My grandmother went to church, So let's get it through. She went to church, Christian church. So, but she had these beliefs passed down to her as a farmer's daughter. And of course, a lot of exchange of information with the Roma community who would come and work on the farm, and Scottish tinkers. So there's a lot of local knowledge and folklore. Is that witchcraft or is that folklore? It's folklore. Sorry, it's folklore. No, I'm not knocking. You want to call yourself a Wiccan, that's fine. And a lot of it you could believe. I don't. My problem is, and this is probably the difference, is if you want to make something ceremonial, then yes, probably that's probably Wicca. Some ceremonial religious thing out of it. Absolutely. But the other thing is, this is how people lived. You got to remember there was no pharmacies. There was nothing. Absolutely nothing. You get sick. This is insane. You could die of toothache. It's like a story I was reading about one of my ancestors. It said that you got to laugh. It's tragic, but you got to laugh. And he was bitten on the leg by a man who had a bad tooth, and he died of blood poisoning naturally. I mean, you got to think. We're living at a time when there was no cure for anything. So unless you had some knowledge of plants and again, this harks back to the Templar Knights, or more accurately in Scotland, the Knights Hospitallers, who are kind of lumped in with the Templars. But the Knights Hospitallers may have actually more to do with Scottish history than the Scottish Templars, and I'll argue that one. And they had a lot of knowledge on how to heal, and particularly on the battlefront, where we had bleeding men or whatever, they had to attend to them. But the Scottish Knights Templars and the Knights Hospitallers kind of lumped into one, and they are quite different. So there's the video I do want to do about Rosslyn Chapel. my explanation of Rosalind, which I've never saw anywhere. I never saw this. This is my own explanation as an historian. I've looked at it. Now, what about what Rosalind's really about? I want to get onto this now. It's to commemorate the Battle of Roslin, and it's a battle that happened. It's not really. It's in history, but it's not a big. No one makes a big deal about it. And this happened when Edward decided to sneak north with his army, and it was like the English are coming moment when a rider rode to Edinburgh and told the Knights Hospitallers that the English army was on its way. So the Hospitallers rode out to Roslin to meet them and fought with them there and defeated them. They defeated Edward's army there. It was a small army, but an attack all the same, a sneaky attack on the capital, Edinburgh. And although I don't have the actual facts to hand, but a Sinclair was involved in the battle. He was a Knights Hospitaller, and consequence, this is, and I don't want to get into my own interests here because this is private, and but I can tell you that he was he built that. This is something that comes down in particular Scottish societies, let's just say. He had an interest in building something to commemorate the battle there and the dead. There was some dead, and the Roslin Chapel came out of it. Now that is a fascinating place in itself, and I've got a boatload of photographs of it. All the important bits that I know what to photograph. Whether you're an occultist or a Freemason, you would get something out of it. Believe me. I'm going to make that video eventually. It's definitely something that's going to raise some curiosity. But that's one of these little interesting facts that why somebody is called something. Why something really happened there. Yeah. Okay, it's like getting on about Alistair Crowley again. Let's go back to him. And why he's called Alistair. There's something people don't even talk about. Now I know as a Scotsman, if your name is Alexander in Scotland, in Gaelic you're called Alistair. That's how it is. That's the Scottish name, Alexander. My father's father was an Alistair, but there's a good chance I understand he was named after Crowley, because my family had some relationship with him in Nairn and Inverness, particularly around the vicinity of Boleskine House. So you can take that or leave it. I don't care. And I've read all these websites saying, "Oh, you just assumed the name Alistair." No, I didn't. That's Scottish. Yeah, do you know what I mean? This is a Scottish thing. This is a tradition. It's a Scottish tradition. Your name's Alexander. You might be called Alistair in Scotland. So Alistair's become a name in its own right. It's a big name in my family. But yeah, anyway, it's a very, very place where the uncanny happens. See if there's any more ghostly stories I can throw at you. I think basically you have to go off the beaten track. Just go off the beaten track, and it's almost guaranteed you'll experience something untoward, and you might unsettle you. You might be comfortable with it. As I said, I like to go to ancient tumuli, and I generally commune with them. I don't have any big issues. I even feel welcome. But my own opinion is, if you ever feel unwelcome or whatever, you should apologise and leave. Hey, let's not tempt fate. But I've visited some, Scottish houses, ancient places where tragedy, in past centuries it's quite common. Just expect the worst. Expect these things to happen. You can be open-minded about it, or you can be... It's a bit like an Irish friend of mine. He was telling me about... This guy believes in leprechauns. He believes in them. Irishman, lives in Glasgow, Scotland, but he's an Irishman. I went to college with him, and he believes in leprechauns. He'll tell you he's seen them. And, it's not like, well, it's just normal. It's not like something out of the ordinary. It's just, yeah, they exist. They exist. He believes, absolutely. And I'm not doubting him. And so he said, when he grew up, very rural area, and he experienced things, and he would see things moving. And don't want to discuss Flagrick here, but let's just say he had, and be very respectful of that thing. Is very dangerous. Don't do it. I would say don't do it. Don't even think about it. But he apparently knew what he was doing, and he communed with the fairies. At one point. Then later, of course, he became very religious. Decided he needed to be saved. So believe what you will. Hope that's been interesting for you. So, ghost stories in my head right now. That I was discussing some. But we have, there's also a demonic nature of it all. I've talked about the panther. There's a story my grandpa used to tell about a demon. He's seen in the locality, and an actual demon, and he would appear as an imp. In the Slamanan area, back then in the farmhouses, and there were stories about people, the person who was dying, doing this thing on the window ledge, an imp. Quite frightening thing, as if it's waiting. And he would talk about it, and dancing. I never got the whole story because I was too young for it to penetrate, but to remember it. But that was a definite. When I was talking about one of my grandpa's stories, local tales. Anyway, have a good night. Sleep well.